Welcome to Adult Ed with Neal McGowan. Kind of a smooth jazz intro there. Kind of bringing us all down a little bit. Good morning. Welcome to Adult Ed. We've been going over anti-heroes of the Old Testament. It's unfortunate that Lee started and then Kira followed. I felt like they brought out the two best first. So I will try my best to follow them. We're staying in the book of Genesis. Lee did Cain, and then Kira did Eve. They both chose heroes of the Bible who have about 2 chapters about them. I'm not going to say they chose the easy way out. Genesis has 25 chapters, or Jacob has 25 chapters in which he is a participant. So we'll see what happens today. We're not going to go over everything about Jacob, but that is who I am going to be talking about this morning. So let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you call us to follow you, to become your children. And your call is based on your grace and not our merits. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So, we are going to be talking about Jacob, who I think is the greatest anti-hero of the Old Testament. Jacob is the son of Isaac and Rebekah, the grandson of Abraham. He has a twin brother. Everyone remember his twin brother's name? Esau, okay? He is the recipient of the covenant promises that God made with Abraham. And then God reiterates those promises with Isaac. And then again with Jacob. He is renamed at a certain point in his life. He has an encounter with an angel / a man / maybe God, where they wrestle, and he is renamed Israel. And so the people of Israel are the people of Jacob. And throughout the Old Testament, you'll see them referred to as the people of Jacob, as Jacob even. He's renamed Israel. You know, this renaming happens in the Bible. Abraham, his original name was Abram, and then he's Abraham, and he always stays Abraham. Jacob is named Israel, but the text goes back and forth. He's still Jacob, and we're going to talk about why that is. So, kind of to help organize this, we're going to think of this as a 4-act story. I'm calling this Jacob Have I Loved. This is a reference to the book of Malachi and then the book of Romans, where God says, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. It's one of the more troubling passages, Romans 9. If you want a real brain twister, if you want to get deep in theological murky territory, go home and read Romans chapter 9. Now, I think it makes sense if you read the book chapters before it and after it, but Jacob, this figure, from the beginning of the scriptures, he is significant throughout the whole Bible, all the way into the New Testament. So we're going to divide this up into 4 acts, looking at Jacob's life in the book of Genesis. His story begins chapter 25. Genesis is 50 chapters. And the first act of Jacob is the thief. Jacob is a thief. He is a swindler. He is a deceiver. He is a liar, a trickster. Now, he's not, and in Christian circles, we're used to swindlers, tricksters. They become part of our story, and they have these big conversion moments. I once was this, now I'm this by God's grace. Jacob, he never really changes. Once a trickster, always a trickster. He deceives from the beginning. So Jacob is born. In your handout, you have Genesis chapter 25, and Act 1, the thief. Isaac, the recipient of God's promise to Abraham, God's promise that he would have descendants nation, this Isaac, his wife Rebekah, is barren. It's a problem. It's a problem if you're going to have multiple descendants. And so Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. The children struggled together within her. And she said, "If it is to be this way, why do I live?" I've had a wife who's been pregnant twice, and she's said the same thing with just one child. If it is to be this way, why do I live? 9 months pregnant in August in Texas. So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger." When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy mantle, so they named him Esau. Afterwards, his brother came out with his hand gripping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, living in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. It's an odd reason to love your child. He cooks good food. I like venison. What can I say? Okay. So this is their origin story, Jacob and Esau, these 2 twins locked in conflict. The name Jacob is a name that means God protects, but the root of this word is the same root for the word crooked or twisted. Jacob is a crooked person. And it is a pun on the word for heel. Jacob is born, and what is he doing? He's grasping. He's holding on tightly to the heel. He's pulling. He's not letting go. He's refusing to let go of his little brother, his older brother. This is a theme throughout Jacob's life. And what virtues he has, this is, if you had a strong-willed child, you know that they refuse to let go of all sorts of things. And this can be a source of deep conflict for you as a parent. You also know that there is a virtue hidden within that. And so insofar as Jacob has a virtue, it is this refusing to let go, a type of stubbornness. Jacob and Esau are of a number of pairings in the book of Genesis. We have Cain and Abel, 2 brothers. Remember, who is the older in Cain and Abel? Cain. Whose sacrifice is accepted? Abel. Jacob and Esau. Esau is the older, but Jacob is the recipient of the promise. Jacob gets married. His 2 wives, Leah and Rachel. Who does Jacob favor? Rachel, the younger. And at the end of his life, Jacob will bless Joseph's sons in Egypt, Ephraim and Manasseh. And rather than doing the typical blessing where the older receives the birthright, the blessing, the call to carry on the father's name, the younger brother receives the blessing. In the world in which this text takes place, the primacy of the firstborn son goes without saying. It's still this way in places in the world. I taught Korean students at one point, and in some more traditional forms of Korean culture, the firstborn son exerts a lot of power in the family. And this took place even at the boarding school where I was teaching. The oldest firstborn Korean boy was in charge and responsible for all of the other Korean boys. And so that meant they would do his dishes for him. He would tell them, do my dishes, and they would go do his dishes. If he wanted to choose the room or the seat on the bus, they deferred to him. The flip side was this boy also had responsibility. He had to care for the younger kids. He had to make sure the younger kids in the group were taken care of and watched and looked out for and respectful for the teachers. But this is today, 21st century, in the world of Genesis, this ancient world, the firstborn was the one who receives the blessing, the birthright, the promise, and the responsibility. Do I have any firstborns in here? This is like music to a firstborn's ear. I'm a firstborn, of course. And the younger siblings, they despise you for it, right? And Jacob, though, is the one who receives the promise. God does this incredible thing that it's not simply by the natural order of things, the way that things are always done. This is how society functions. God calls, God's grace works counterintuitively. He chooses the younger, beginning with Abel, and we see here with Jacob and Esau. We see in the story of God's freedom in election, God choosing. God chooses not in ways that are inevitable. Grace is an intrusion into our world, and grace is not fair. The story of Jacob is not a story where things are fair. So, Jacob is a crooked man, an anti-hero. His life is filled with deception. We see immediately after we learn that he was born gripping his brother's heel. You almost get the image of him pulling, like, get back. You're not going to be in front of me. Immediately after this, we learn that Isaac favors Esau, the older son, because he was kind of a manly man. He was into the game. He was into hunting. Jacob, he liked to hang around the tents. I don't know what he's doing around the tents. He's a homebody. Esau's out in the woods, and Jacob is crocheting with mom, right? This is sort of what the text is setting up. And this favoritism, in families, if you have ever known or your family unfortunately has experienced favoritism towards one of the siblings, it can be so destructive. It can spill out, especially if it's not very well hidden, right? And Jacob, his dad, favors his older brother. Now, Jacob will continue this process of favoring within the family dynamic that is so destructive. Jacob, he loves his wife Rachel. And he doesn't say he despises Leah, but he almost does. Leah becomes so desperate. She keeps having these children. And the text says, so that my husband will notice me. It's so heartbreaking. But Jacob, he does not notice her. He still favors Rachel. When he has all of these boys, he ends up having 12 sons. And Jacob, remember the son that he favors? Think of Donny Osmond here. Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? Joseph. Joseph is the penultimate son, Rachel's son. Jacob so favors Joseph to the exclusion of all his 11 other sons that his 11 other sons despise Joseph. He gets him the coat, right? This beautiful garment that Joseph gets to wear. None of the other brothers get that. This wreaks havoc because the other brothers plot to kill Joseph and only decide not to kill him when they're like, well, I would hate to have blood on our hands, so let's just sell him into slavery. That's not so bad, right? We could sell him into slavery, pretend he's dead, and, that'll be great. So this is what they do. And this spills out of this favoritism. Isaac favoring Esau. Jacob favoring Rachel. Jacob then favoring Joseph, and then his younger brother Benjamin. When Joseph is now in Pharaoh's court. He's helping to save all of Egypt and the surrounding countryside. And the brothers come back to beg for grain from Joseph. They don't recognize it's Joseph. Joseph tricks them. Get the tricking there, deception. Where do you think he learned this? Joseph tricks them and says, you need to bring back your youngest brother. You lied. There's another one of you. And so they go back to their dad, Jacob, these 10 brothers, and they say he really wants Benjamin. And Jacob, their father, says in front of them, if I lose Benjamin, I won't have any sons left. These 10 boys are all standing right in front of him. So this grasper, grabber, deceiver, this favoritism wreaks havoc in Jacob's life. We see here, if we keep reading in this passage, once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the field and he was famished. Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red stuff, for I am famished. Robert Alter, I believe Kira mentioned him and Lee mentioned him the previous week. He's a translator and commentator on the Old Testament. He translated it as that red thing, which is literally what it is. It's like Esau is not the brains in the operation, right? It's like, give me that red stuff. Give me the red thing. He's so hungry. And Jacob said, first sell me your birthright. Esau said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. You see how muscular in this, he's not very hairy though, in this painting, Esau is. And Jacob masterfully like, oh, you're hungry, huh? Sure, I'll give you some food. We keep going. So he steals the birthright. That is the inheritance. The stuff. That's not enough for Jacob. He goes to his father. His father is old. This is the second passage, 27. Isaac is old. He can't see. He called his elder son Esau and said to him, my son. And he answered, here I am. This is the same language Abraham before Isaac when he takes him to the mountain thinking he's going to have to kill him. He says, my son. He says, here I am. This sacrifice here. But what is being sacrificed? It's an unintentional sacrifice. Here I am, he said, see, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. Then prepare for me savory food such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may bless you before I die. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me game and prepare for me savory food to eat, that I may bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my word as I command you. Go to the flock, get 2 choice kids, so that I may prepare from them savory food for your father, such as he likes, and you shall take it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. But Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, look, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a man of smooth skin. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. His mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my word and go get them for me. You remember how Jacob tricks his father that he's not the smooth-skinned man. Does everyone remember? He takes the goat skins and he applies them on his arm. He wears Esau's clothes, put the goat skins on his arm so that when his dad feels his arms, Esau must be really hairy, I just got to say. Since when I was a little kid, I was always like, how did that work? Like, I don't know. I've felt a goat before, and it's not just a little hair. Like, that's all there is, right? I don't know. But he tricks his dad. He tricks his aged father. His mom sets him up to it. These are some unhealthy family dynamics, clearly. His mom sets him up to it. At no point is his objection, hey, maybe it's wrong to do this to poor old dad. No, it's more, I don't want to get caught. That's his chief concern. And so he tricks his father, gets the blessing. So the blessing is sort of the honor, the power of the father being passed on, the favor that the father has being passed on to this son. He takes the birthright, the inheritance, and then he steals the favor. The father lays his hands on his son and blesses him. Esau shows up late. He just missed. And he said, is there not a blessing for me? Please, Dad, bless me. And his father said, the blessing has been given. It's too late. So Jacob runs away because Esau is very angry. Jacob runs. And there's this other thing about Jacob. So I've been portraying him as kind of a nasty person, which he is, for God's eternal purposes, in the mysteries of God's grace and mercy, through no action of Jacob, who we only see praying to God towards the end of his life, when he encounters, well, it's not quite the end, when he encounters Esau and is terrified of dying at the hand of Esau later on in the story. This is when the only time we see Jacob reaching out to God, calling on God's name. And yet, in the mystery of God's grace, God's mercy, God's choosing, Jacob is also a character who has these incredible encounters with God. This is a famous William Blake painting. He had these visionary paintings, and this is of Jacob's ladder. Jacob flees his family. He's going to his brother Laban, hoping to marry into someone within the family, or his uncle Laban, Rebekah, his mother's brother. On the way, he's in the desert, completely alone, frightened for his life. He falls asleep. The text tells us he uses a rock as a pillow. This is how destitute he is. He doesn't even have an extra shirt. And in the night, he has this vision of angels, messengers of God, ascending and descending from heaven. I've been listening to Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven while I've been preparing for this. It has nothing to do with this, by the way. I was like, maybe there's a tie-in I could bring into the thing. I was like, no, I think it's about something else, less spiritual. The text, again, it's a ramp. He has this dream, this incredible encounter with God. And God, in this moment, gives him the promise that he gave to Abraham and then to Abraham's son Isaac. I will make of you a great nation. You will have descendants. You will have all of these children. The nation shall come from you. I will bless you, and the land where you are laying right now will become yours. And God goes on and tells Jacob this, and look, I am with you. I will guard you. I will make what I promised accomplished in you. It's an extraordinary promise. Jacob at no point has called out to God to warrant this response from God. And Jacob's response is very Jacob. He wakes up, it's incredible vision. He does build a pillar. I guess he takes the rock he was sleeping on and stands it up, and this is going to be a monument. This place is Bethel, is what he calls it, which is significant throughout the rest of the Old Testament as a place of worship in the northern part of the kingdom of Israel. This is a place that is God's house, is what Bethel means. The veil between Earth and heaven is thin here. And then he goes on to say this. God has said, I will do it all for you. He says, if the Lord God be with me and guard me on the way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and if I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God. Abraham, God says, go. He packs up his bag. He leaves. Jacob, God says, I am going to take care of you. I mean, you're seeing angels. I mean, like, what other proof do you? And he says, okay, God, if you protect me, God has just said, I will protect you. If you guard me, God has just said, I will guard you. Then you will be my God. He's striking a deal, a bargain, a wager. He's grasping. He's not letting go. Jacob goes, we go to Act 2 of Jacob's life, the husband. Jacob arrives at Laban's house, immediately falls in love with Rachel, Laban's youngest daughter. I mean, he's head over heels for her. He tells Laban, his uncle, okay, yes, it's cousins, but there are fewer people in the gene pool to choose from then. He says, look, I will work for you for 7 years to marry Rachel. Laban says, oh yeah, great, Jacob. Laban is also a real bad trickster. It runs in the family. He says, yeah, great, work 7 years. So Jacob slaves away for his uncle for 7 years. The wedding happens, and he wakes up the next morning, and lo and behold, it is not Rachel, it is the older sister, Leah, with the weak eyes. That's what the text tells us. We don't know what weak eyes means. Is she cross-eyed? I mean, it's a sad thing. Leah's story is heartbreaking. And Jacob said, you tricked me. That's not the woman I wanted to marry. And Laban's like, oh, I forgot to tell you. We have this custom. I'm sorry, I should have brought it up, in the 7 years you were working for me. We have this custom where you can't marry the younger daughter if the older daughter is not married. So I just figured I'd give you the older first. Why don't you work for me? Stay here. You can marry, at the end of the week, you can marry Rachel. I'm like, dude, Jacob, this is a bad situation. Your domestic happiness is going to cease forever. Like, just take your losses and run. But no, Jacob really loves Rachel. He says, okay, so he marries her at the end of the week with another deal that he will stay on and work for Laban for 7 more years. So Jacob marries Rachel. He gets what he wants. Immediately what happens is Leah and Rachel have this contest, this fight that just permeates for, better part of decades over children. Rachel is barren. Leah has ultimately 6 children. They use their maids, so Jacob ends up marrying each of their respective maids. I'm like, Jacob, you need to go to another well to meet some other girls if this is not working. They are just fighting, constant fighting. They resort to mandrakes, folk medicine. Finally, Rachel has Joseph. And then, of course, we learn later on she has Benjamin, which she dies with in childbirth. And so Jacob, as a husband, his wives are fighting, struggling, grasping. The favoritism that is in him is spilling out, wreaking havoc on his household. His uncle is trying to rip him off. Jacob is doing really well in the family goat business. There are a lot of goats. And Laban is like, and Jacob says, look, there's getting to be too many of us. We're all crowded around here. There's too many of us. Let me go out. Let me set out on my own. I think I'm ready. And so the deal they strike is that all of the striped and speckled goats will be Jacob's. Now, these are the goats that have a blemish that you would not choose if you were to bring them to a sacrifice. These are the less than perfect goats. and these are the rarer variety. So the deal is that basically Jacob is not going to get much. Laban's going to keep all of the solid colored goats, and Jacob's going to get stuck. Jacob does this thing. It's kind of, I don't understand it. He gets some almond trees and pulls the bark off so that there's stripes and puts it by where the goats drink water, where they also mate. And supposedly when they look at these almond trees that have the speckled bark on them, the children that are born, the kids that are born to these goats will be speckled. So Jacob basically tricks, Laban tries to trick him. Jacob's like, I got a technique that'll get me a lot of speckled goats. And so then for years, the only goats that are born are speckled and striped. And Jacob only does this with the strongest of the goats. So he finally, this is his home life is chaos. It becomes so bad. This is at the bottom of your page. And Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, and that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he fled with all that he had. Starting out, he crossed the Euphrates and set his face towards the hill country of Gilead. Jacob is once again a man on the run. This time he's a very wealthy man on the run. But he has to run away again. He has to flee. And he deceives his uncle. The conflict between them is so bad. They eventually sort of work things out. They make a covenant together. Jacob leaves Laban. He then enters the country where his brother Esau has set up. And Jacob gets terrified. He divides his huge family now into two camps. This is Jacob. This is a Rembrandt. That's Jacob and Rachel. He actually goes up and kisses her immediately when he sees her. And so he flees, terrified of Esau. He divides his family into two groups so that if Esau attacks him, maybe one group can run away. So they put some distance between them. He will go on to divide the family again. He will go at the head of the family when they approach Esau. And then Leah and her children are next, so that if Esau kills him, the next in line to be killed is Leah. And then he puts Rachel and her son Joseph at the very end. I mean, it's just like the family dynamics are such a mess. He's terrified of meeting Esau. The last words he heard from Esau was that Esau was going to kill him for stealing the blessing. And on the way, he has this dream. Again, he has this encounter. It's not a dream. I'm not quite sure. He meets this man, and they start wrestling. And at one point, Jacob refuses to give up. It goes into the night. And Jacob says, "Give me your blessing. I won't let go until you bless me." The text is really murky. I encourage you, if you have a chance, we had Dr. Rachel Toombs talk with us in a Lenten supper. She gave an excellent talk on this passage that I encourage you. It's on our online stuff somewhere. I don't know. You can find it. And I encourage you to watch it because she really unpacks this. It's not, the text tells us this is a man, but Jacob sees this as God or an angel. And they're wrestling. And the man eventually is overcome and does bless Jacob. Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. He gets a wound in his hip that never goes away by this man or by God. Again, it's this incredible, this is Marc Chagall painting of it. With his, you can see his rooster up in the top. Jacob, the striver, the grasper, is renamed Israel. What does it mean to be the people of God? Israel are those who strive with God. This is in our Bible. God is not like, I'm going to name my people submission. I'm going to name my people slaves, followers. He gives his people the name of co-wrestlers, people who grab onto him and don't let go. It's Jacob's vice and it's his virtue. It's the thing that causes him trouble again and again, and yet we see that God, in God's mercy, does not smite him right here, but allows Jacob to cling to him. Jacob goes on, he sees Esau. Esau does not kill him. Esau, in fact, shows him mercy. Esau, this is Genesis 33, ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Esau, the one who is rejected, the one who does not receive anything of the blessing, Esau who becomes the people of Edom, Israel's enemy. Esau's descendants form a nation. It forms the nation of Edom, and the Israelites despise them. Esau shows Jacob mercy. Jacob goes on to say, he tries to give him these gifts. Esau says, no, I've done well. And Jacob's like, no, I've actually done better than you. It's kind of, if you read between the lines, they're still brothers, right? I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Jacob said, no, please, if I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God. He's just seen the face of God in this wrestling bout, and now he sees his brother, and the mercy that his brother shows him is like the face of God. We keep going. Jacob ages. He becomes an old man. His favoritism costs him. Joseph, his favored son, is sold into slavery. Then he's restored at the end. Joseph is saved. His family is saved. God's promise to guard and protect him perseveres. And Jacob, his last action as an old man, the thing he does before he dies, is he blesses the sons of Joseph, born in Egypt. Israel, he's called Israel now, stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger. You can see it in this. I don't think that's what they wore, but he crosses his hands. He puts his right hand, the hand of blessing, on the head of the younger child. And with his left hand, he puts it on the older. And he blesses them. Joseph thinks his dad is too old, is out of his mind. He tries to switch him. He's like, no, Dad, this is the older one. You forgot. It's okay. And Joseph's like, no. Jacob says, no. Israel says, no. The God before whom my ancestors Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who redeemed me from all harm, bless the boys, and in them let my name be perpetuated, in the name of my ancestor Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude of the earth. When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, since this one is the firstborn, since this is how it's done, this is how the world works, put your right hand on his head. Joseph still is learning about grace. Jacob, old as he is, failure in so many ways, he knows the nature of mercy and God's choosing. His father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he. So he blessed them that day. By you, Israel will invoke blessings, saying, God, make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh. So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. This old man, he switches the blessing again. It's one last trick. One last trick. God chooses Jacob. There's nothing, I hope, in what I've heard to make you think that Jacob was worthy of that choice. Jacob did nothing to earn God's favor, God's blessing. He was not very righteous. He was not a very good person. He made major mistakes along the way, and yet God's mercy, God's care, God's provision, he chooses Jacob. Jacob ends his life in this act of mercy to a younger son and switches the blessing. What I hope that the story of Jacob and Esau, the story of Jacob shows, is that what matters for us is not as important as, Jacob should have learned things like, you need to be a good husband and father, and don't do what Jacob did. Polygamy is illegal, first off. But Jacob, he was awful. But God still worked in him. God's grace was in him. His life was a shambles. At the end of his life, he got everything he wanted. But it was striving and struggle every step of the way. And yet, he becomes Israel, the people of God. And one of his descendants, it becomes the Messiah, the Son of God, who saves the world not by pulling at the world's heel, although he does step on the serpent with his heel, but by offering himself to die for the world. And so the story of Jacob is a story of God's mercy and grace, God's choosing that does not depend on us. All right, guys, thank you. We went through all of Genesis 25 through 50. You made it. Was not sure I was going to do it. All right.
If there's a button in your hedgerow, don't be alone there. It's just a sprinkling for the May Queen. Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run,